The influx of fentanyl through our southern border is so horrific that the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, is now updating its list of who the top target is. So long, El Chapo. Now agents want the ex-drug lord's son gang member, Los Chapitos. Am I saying that right? Chapitos, whatever, terrorists, you know. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says if elected, he would declare a national emergency and send troops to the southern border to combat the flow of drugs into our country. I think I've heard that somewhere before. According to the DEA, last year alone, over 100,000 people died from a drug overdose in the United States, and many say that's an underestimated number. Let's welcome in our expert panel to discuss. We are still waiting for former Special Agent George Williams, but let's go to Mark Powell. We have Mark Powell with us. He's the former San Diego police officer, and also with us, Betsy McCoy, former New York lieutenant governor and also New York Post columnist. So I'll start off with you, Mark. I remember that a lot of people thought Trump was crazy. Remember this, when he said that drug dealers should be treated like terrorists and that we should bomb their labs? But it doesn't sound too crazy now, does it?
Well, it's not off base, and in the 80s, the DEA used to bomb their labs. They were out in Bolivia, out in Colombia, and they would go out into the jungle, blowing up these laboratories where they were cooking up cocaine. Now it's a different story. Now we have fentanyl, which is being shipped across the border in groves. And the reason why they can do it and why they can lose a lot of these fentanyl pills is because it's so inexpensive for them to make. It's a couple of cents to make a fentanyl pill versus having cocaine where you have growing crops and all of those things involved. So we have a serious crisis, and I'm hoping that the Biden administration will someday really treat it as a crisis.
Absolutely. Now, Betsy McCoy, nearly 70% of those overdoses can be attributed to synthetic opioids like fentanyl. So is it more accurate to say instead of overdose that we should be saying poisonings at this point?
Right. And the two culprits are China, where it's made, and Mexico, which is allowing the criminals and the drug cartels to bring it in. And I totally agree with Ron DeSantis that the troops should be used at the southern border to defend our population from fentanyl.
Absolutely. All right. We do have George Williams now with us. He's a man who's worked with the Drug Enforcement Agency, former special agent George Williams. And, you know, rather than stop the drugs, there's now a fentanyl vaccine in the works. Here in New York City, they have vending machines where you can get Narcan, but they also have syringes in there. George, do you think the legalization of drugs is helping this situation that we're in right now? Because a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm just getting a little Xanax or I'm getting a little marijuana and have no idea that it's laced with fentanyl, and then they don't wake up.
No, I don't think it reminds me of methadone. Okay, remember during the heroin surge in the 70s, I was a special agent in New York, and we had the epidemic of heroin, and they would give methadone. Methadone is a drug, and it caused a lot of folks to go on heroin. So I don't think this is going to do any good. We have to stop it, and we have to declare, like Governor DeSantis said, a national emergency, and we have to take action against China and Mexico. And that's what former President Trump did. So, no, that is not going to help. It reminds me of the 70s with the heroin and methadone epidemic.
That is a great point there. Mark, you were also the former San Diego police officer. We're seeing what's happening to San Francisco. We're seeing Chicago, Philadelphia. It's like the Walking Dead. Then there's this new drug, Trank. Law enforcement, yes. It seems like their hands are also tied, because I see it here in New York City that you can literally put a needle in your arm and the cops can't even arrest you.
It's unbelievable. Here in California, we have something called Prop 47, which essentially allows open drug use in the street. But the big question I have here is, what kind of message are we sending to our children when we say, hey, now there's a vaccine for opioids? You know, Narcan oftentimes is referred to by some teens as a designated driver. What do you mean? What I mean by designated driver? Kids now carry Narcan with them, and they say, "I'm the designated driver. If somebody in the party should overdose, I will use the Narcan to revive them." So by creating a vaccine, what are we going to do now? We're going to mandate it in schools. We're going to say your kids now have to be vaccinated for opioids. This is not the right message to send to kids. It's not the right message to send to Americans. This is a problem that we need to stop. We need to stop it at the border, and we need to impose a national drug awareness education campaign in all of our schools, similar to what they did when they have equity and diversity embedded right in the curriculum. We have to do that with drugs because drugs kill kids.
And I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Nancy Reagan said, just say no to drugs. And now they want to make all drugs legal. And here's a vaccine, and here's something you can squirt up your nose in case you overdose. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It starts at the top right there with President Biden. George Williams, Mark Powell, and Betsy, you'll be back with us. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon.